Hey guys, sorry, drop these. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and today's new comic book day. So I got a bunch of comics in. Unfortunately, my comic book store got a little laid up, so none of the DC books are ready for me yet. And I do have a few other books that I picked up at the store, including Catwoman 80th, Undiscovered Country, and Bitter Root. But I haven't had a chance to read all of them, so we're just going to focus on the Marvel books I pulled today, of which I have a few. So once again, we're going to just kind of go through these in order from least to most liked. I didn't actually dislike any of these books, but there's certainly a sense of scale I got from all of this. So without further ado, we're going to go with the first book, and that's Black Widow #1. Now, I don't think this was new. I was just kind of waiting for them to get at least some of my order ready at the store, so I saw this and decided to pick it up, not really knowing much about it, or even when exactly it came out. On the book it says June 2020, but that means nothing anymore. I have no idea if this came in last week or this week or back in June and I just missed it. But either way, this is a new series by Kelly Thompson, who's writing, Elena Casgrande, who does the art, Jodie Belair, who does the coloring, and Corey Petit, who does lettering. Adam Hughes did the cover, but not the cover I have. I have a variant cover by somebody. Doesn't really say which one it was, but that's fine. No one signed this? Artists need to sign their art. That's all I gotta say about that. This was a pretty good story. I've read a good amount of Black Widow comics recently for our video about her best villains, so I have a bit of perspective on this. I can't say this story blew me away, but the art certainly did. I enjoyed this comic quite a bit, to be honest. It's kind of crazy that this ended up scaling lowest. On another week, this might be like #1 for me. I really like the artwork early on where it's showing her breaking in. It's almost going to be a little hard for you guys to see it just because it's so dark. I was reading this in the shade in my bedroom. Gotta move that camera already. The sun really moves onto the screen at a certain time. That's usually a good time for me to stream, so I gotta just keep it out of the camera's eyesight so you guys can see me a little better. This is all just kind of about Black Widow starting an infiltration. And then she goes home, someone's in her home, apartment. She gets darted and knocked out of a window. And it just basically, the last we see of this moment is her falling to her death and saying, "This can't be it." Thinking that to herself. Then we cut to 3 months later and Natalia's living in San Francisco working on a building. I don't know if she's married, but certainly living with someone she's in love with. And doesn't seem to remember anything about her life. I don't know if this is amnesia or something, but she just starts going about her business. She sees a motorcycle and just kind of impulsively buys it and knows how to ride it, even though she doesn't really understand how that is. And she happens to walk past a newscaster and basically just gets shown on the footage for a few minutes. Hawkeye happens to see that across the country and is like, "Oh, what?" And he calls Winter Soldier and they're both like, "Well, I haven't seen Natasha for 3 months, but that's not exactly unusual for a spy character." And then they start debating whether or not they should seek her out. And then the issue ends with her going home and meeting this guy who she's apparently in love with. I don't think it's supposed to be a recognizable character. It's just she's happy and has found peace with someone and seems to very much be in love. Then we cut to her being monitored and watched by Arcade. So it's a pretty interesting first issue. I've read stronger Black Widow comics, even stronger first issues, because she's had a lot of miniseries and stuff over the years. I shouldn't put this away yet. But I didn't hate this comic, and like I said, the art really sold me on it. The art kind of elevates it a little bit. We've had a couple of those issues so far ever since I started doing these live reviews, where the story's not anything super exceptional, but that art really sells me on it, because that first scene with her doing spy stuff is really cool, and I just like the look of it. I'll show another page of it, why not? This huge spread of her just running around, fighting people. It's, again, a little hard to see because it's done dark, but not in a way that, if you're looking at the page in person, it's hard to tell what's going on. It's just well done. And she kind of does this infiltration with Hawkeye, but he's all pissed at her, so he doesn't talk to her during this, and that sort of feeds into them not knowing the meaning behind this disappearance. I was also going to say there's a little ad at the end of this thing. I don't know if it's out yet because it's advertised for April 2020, but again, that doesn't mean anything. Called Widowmaker. Widowmakers, I should say. Kind of looks interesting. Looks like Red Guardian and Yelena are teaming up to do stuff. I like that idea. It's by Devin Grayson and Michelle Bandini. I don't know if anyone at home has seen that before or has checked out that series if it's out yet, but leave some thoughts in the chat if I should pick that one up. So that's about it for Black Widow number 1. Sun's moving again. How can I position you to get out of my vision of fields? Stop it. Oh, I know what I'll do the thing I did before. Forgot. I just gotta kind of block it out. There we go. Yeah. Alright. So, next up is the thumbnail one. Fantastic Four Empyre number 0. So, I really didn't know what to expect out of this book. I knew it would be kind of setting up the ending of Empyre Avengers number 0, where the Fantastic Four basically just show up with a fleet of Kree and Skrull ships. I have to say, the actual execution of how that came to be is quite interesting. I liked how this book set up their coming into this story, and Dan Slott did a really remarkably good job of that. And I say that as someone who is not a fan of Dan Slott, and even felt that here. I would say... okay, so the majority of... I'm looking for this spot where the writing starts to win me over. Yeah. So this part of the book, the vast majority of it, versus this tiny little part. This is the part that won me over. This is the part that I was... it's hard, you can't see that. But 1, 2, 3... 4 pages left of a relatively longer book. Like, this isn't 28. This has got to be 28 or so, is what won me over. And 24 of the pages were good, but Bendis is... or not Bendis. What an interesting accident that was. Dan Slott's dialogue leaves a lot to be desired in this book, and I just don't love him as a comic book writer. So he's really good at kind of introducing, especially with the Fantastic Four, this world of space. Like, they're out in space, and they're basically just stranded, and their ship isn't working. And this book, and Dan Slott in general, does a really good job at making things feel world-building and big, and out in space there's different aliens, they're doing weird things. But where it loses me a little bit is in their dialogue. So we have the Profiteer, which is one of the what are they called, Guardians or whatever, but she's like the Grand Master and stuff, and she's talking to one of her underlings and goes, the underling goes, here, I'll just start from the beginning of this conversation. The Profiteer says, these skirmishes must go on longer or our clients will grow bored of them. Underling, perhaps if we postpone their next fight, ma'am, give them time to rest. That's what the Casino Cosmico's previous owner would have done in this situation. Profiteer interrupts, which is precisely why my brother, the Grandmaster, is the previous owner. Underling responds with, meep, womp womp. So, like, all these characters kind of have this, like, Joss Whedon-y, jokey dialogue on the previous page. Like, Johnny Storm decides to basically recruit the Thing into fighting in this little arena at this casino that the Profiteer runs, and he gets all excited about it, and he's like, oh, quit whining, Thing. Like, the way I see it, Ben, once you win the match, you'll be traveling home in style, after I take my cut, of course. And then Thing goes, oi, how do I get myself in these predicaments? I don't know if I'm conveying what's wrong with this dialogue, but it's very on the nose. It's all very jokey, and it lacks weight to it. And it keeps happening throughout this book. And it doesn't get better, but what does get better is Dan Slott does clever things, either like both with the world building and in adding these new alien things and ideas, but also in setting up the whole Kree Skrull thing. They talk about how there was a brief peace declared in the Fantastic Four book dealing with the Kree and the Skrull after the first Secret War. and basically the family traveled to the blue area of the moon minus the Thing, found these two people, like Korean Skrull members, fighting on behalf of everyone else, and got them to unite by fighting against the Fantastic Four. And basically, the team finds these two kids that have been forced to battle each other on behalf of the Kree and the Skrull in this little arena thing. And the Profiteer's doing this kind of to make money, and she talks about how the Kree-Skrull War had been going on for so long that it was basically the galactic community's gold standard, and without that war happening and it driving industry and basically propelling the entire intergalactic economy, their currency has collapsed and everything's just become bartering, which is really cool. That gets into the whole political angle that Al Ewing has been doing. I didn't think Dan Slott was capable of using that idea and integrating it into his story, because I've really never seen him do anything like that before, but he does a good job with it. Like, this is a really interesting idea on the whole, and the stuff he's exploring here is executed quite well. So the Fantastic Four kind of gets these kids to unite against them, and then they win the battle together, and then they basically work out a deal where they get the kids back from the Profiteer, but Reed Richards learns that, like, basically the Kree-Skrull War is over through all of this, and is understandably concerned. And he kind of, his reasoning for being concerned about peace, aside from the economy collapsing, which does pose a lot of problems even for a relatively excluded planet like Earth, he's also right about, like, well, what would cause them to no longer be at war with each other? Like, he's right to be worried about that. And sure enough, when they come back to Earth, there's a fleet of Kree and Skrull ships. And the Fantastic Four actually don't know what's going on with that. Which I didn't expect based on the ending of Empyre Avengers #0. I thought they would be a lot more involved with those politics, and they would basically be coming up against the Avengers on the opposite side of this conflict. That doesn't seem to be the case. The only thing that's particularly notable about the Fantastic Four is they have those two kids, and they're right on the cover here, two Korean Skrull kids, both of whom have the collective memory of the entire war in their head thanks to the Profiteer, and they hate each other now. Those kids are funny. They got good dialogue together, but then the Thing that gets all gushy about them, and we get right into that terrible Dan Slott dialogue. So it's all over the place, this book, but I liked it on the whole, and I ranked it even above Black Widow, because all that political stuff that kind of comes up near the end and is peppered into the beginning throughout is pretty cool. I also like Franklin and Valeria basically are told to just watch the ship while all this is happening, and Valeria's like, well, they gave me this super valuable ship, and we're at a casino, and I'm this crazy genius. Like, obviously what they wanted us to do was sell the ship for chips and attempt to win more money through gambling. And then Sue Storm gets wind of this and goes off to yell at the kids. And I liked all of that stuff up until, like, Sue then just starts helping the kids cheat to get their money back, and I get it's all for jokes, but it's weird parenting. Let's just put it that way. It's a weird character moment. It doesn't feel like something Sue Storm would do. I think Dan Slott thought of the idea of having the Invisible Woman cheating at a casino and running around doing that as a fun idea, and he just sort of ran without really thinking it through. Because they even say in the casino, oh, we'd never get away with doing that trick again, like once they're leaving and stuff. And it's like, well, how did you get away with it to begin with? They don't have any technology or means to look for cloaking. There's kind of a reasoning there that they're distracted because of the rest of the Fantastic Four basically confronting the Profiteer, so she's too busy to notice Franklin, Valeria, and Sue clearing the casino out. So there's elements of this that work, but just, I don't know, any little bits I found a little off-putting in this book, and it wasn't perfect by any means. And absolutely, out of all the Empyre stuff I've read so far, because pretty much everything else I've read so far has been written by Al Ewing, this is the weakest. This is not that strong in terms of its writing compared to, like, the Avengers Empyre issue, which I quite enjoyed. This one's a lot more variable in its quality. It has its strong moments, but not always. R.B. Sylvia does the artwork, and he's awesome. We've talked about him on this channel before. I mean, every single one of these pages looks good, even if none particularly stand out, but sure, well, look at this ending. This ending's setting up the final page of Empyre Avengers, and you just see the reflection of that fleet in the view of their ship. and it's done really well. I liked the book on the whole, in spite of all these problems, and would probably recommend it. But I don't know if I'm gonna read all of Fantastic Four Empire's little tie-in run, because I'd rather focus on some of the other series if this thing's gonna be so weak. R.B. Sylvia's work again mitigates that to a degree, but not enough for me to justify enjoying it beyond like the basics we have here. That's all I really have to say on the matter. I am looking forward to the rest of Empyre the event though, because it keeps, I don't know, it's just got a lot of, it's so political that I'm really enjoying it so far. That's a weird thing to say, but it's not, and it's not like on the nose, preachy political kind of either. It's just politically themed. There's economics going on, there's wartime politics, and dealing with this alien race that was basically just wiped out by the kree, I want to say, or the Skrulls. I'm getting them mixed up now. Like with those plant people that the Avengers met on the blue area of the moon. And there's something to it, something to Empyre that I am at least curious about what it all means. Hey Tevya, thanks for joining us. So I'm not totally sure where it's going to go from here, but I am curious about it. Let's put it that way. Last up, we have X-Force. We reviewed the first 4 issues of X-Force on our channel, including going over what they're all about. So you can check out that video. I'm not going to go over that too much, but I have been following X-Force on my own since then, even if we haven't had a chance to make a video about them up until now. So that would include issues 5 to 9, as well as number 10 here. In short, 5 to 9 has been kind of following up on what the first 4 issues set up, dealing with the fallout of Domino's capture by the crazy terrorist organization. Tevya asks if I have read DC's Dead Planet yet. That is on order. It should have arrived today. Actually, it did arrive, just my comic book store got it relatively late, so they didn't have time to process all the DC books. And I came in twice to the store today trying to pick up at least some of these books, but I didn't get any of my DC ones yet. So stay tuned for my thoughts on that when I get the book, and I'll share those probably tomorrow, assuming some crazy scheduling thing doesn't happen. Anyways, X-Force is dealing with the fallout of Domino being captured by the crazy terrorist scientists, and her like being, first of all, traumatized by that, and issue number 8 gets really into that. And second of all, these terrorist people are like have her DNA and her flesh now, and they are using it to like hack into Krakoa and make all these crazy different super soldiers that have Domino's luck powers. It's interesting, and that organization, we've learned a little bit more about them. They have some sort of really rich benefactor that's expecting these results and has got some sort of powers going on with him. And then they're also dealing with this, what is it called? Terra Verde, this South American island nation that has this interesting mythology with plants. And because of the way the X-Men books are all written these days, we get these big long pages of explanation, so they really get into that mythology. This issue basically, so they deal with Terra Verde, and Beast does something to their plant technology to basically get this terrorist who's the son of Terra Verde's president killed. And then the whole island nation goes dark, and they talk about it at the beginning of issue 9, like just all communications lost, newspapers and radios stop broadcasting from there, satellite images just show a once thriving cities go completely dark overnight. And so the X-Men are like, okay, that's weird. Well, and I should say X-Force is particularly interested about this, and Beast isn't really letting on that he knows damn well he's responsible for all of this, and he gets confronted about that. Beast does some awful things in these books, but like I understand his rationale. It's just very clear that he screwed up so badly, and his reasoning for it and why he did it is pretty messed up. I find it interesting, and I found X-Force really compelling. It's honestly one of my favorite of the X-Men books, and all of the X-Men books are great right now. X-Force is one that I've been able to stay caught up on, which is great because some of them I'm not fully there yet because they really are coming out fast, and I'm just trying to work my way through them. as I see fit for my mood. So in issue number 9, Beast sends a small squad of X-Force consisting of Wolverine, Kid Omega, and Domino into Terra Verde to recognize what's going on. They open the portal, and by the way, already once in X-Force, they've had an issue with the portal where Kid Omega and Wolverine walked through and there were people waiting for them to kill them, and they both got horribly killed. Kid Omega walks through this new portal and face plants against something. His glasses shatter and his nose starts bleeding. And he's like, these freaking portals. But like Kid Omega, especially in issue number 9, just gets to star in this thing. And I know Joey's a big fan of this character. I am too. He's really fun. He's on point in this last issue. Issue 10 isn't so much more about him. It's about our friend Black Tom, who's on the cover here, who's also amazing in this series because Tom's whole thing is communicating and dealing with plants. So he's just had such an interesting role on Krakoa and a very ambiguous relationship with the Island Nation. And his character really carries this particular issue, but X-Force in general. He's like the breakout star of this series, which is kind of cool. So Black Tom so the 3 X-Force members go in and they have to cut through something that's on the other side of the portal, and it's basically this weird growth of plants and human flesh. So when Wolverine cuts into it, it's blood, and he's like, oh, like it's jelly too. It's not like the regular consistency of blood. So they go through and they just find everyone's dead. They've all been turned into these crazy plant monsters. They show it better in issue 9, but I only have a digital copy of that. This is my first print copy of the X-Force series, actually. I converted. But they're all like messed up and weird plant creatures like this. The 3 of them go in and just are completely overwhelmed by this. Kid Omega straight up dies. Again, that's the fun part about the new rules with X-Men, is they can just do that, and these plant creatures like hold him up, and just spores come out of his body, and he completely disintegrates. Wolverine and Domino are getting all messed up too. Let's see if I can find Kid Omega. Yeah, there's like, look what happens to him. That messed up. So anyways, all that's going down. Jean Grey finds out about this and confronts Beast and is like, what the hell, man? And just calls him out on all his terrible behavior. He apparently sheds a tear, but we don't actually see that on panel, which I think was an interesting choice. Her, Sage, and Black Tom all go to Terra Verde and basically save the day. They combine their powers, so Jean uses her telepathy, and then Sage's like weird techno powers, and then Tom's ability to communicate with plants to hack the plants of Terra Verde and just wipe them out in one fell swoop. It's a neat story. It's a neat moment because it's a cool way of combining those 3 powers to solve a very specific and cool situation that wouldn't normally help. Like, it wouldn't be nearly as effective against any other enemy, but those 3 just happened to be the right people for this job. And it's interesting Beast didn't send them, but I think he didn't want to acknowledge what he did at all. Like, he didn't tell the 3 that he sent, and Jean would have seen right through him, so that's why he did. And same with Sage, so he didn't tell him. So that all happens, and the day is basically saved. Wolverine goes home for a much-deserved rest, and Jean comes up to him, and without it even having to say anything, one look at her, and he's like, oh, you quit X-Force. She always seemed like a weird fit to me personally, and she says, yeah, like, she doesn't really have the moral fiber for it, and isn't really willing to tolerate. It's a weird team, because this is the only team of the X-Men that's allowed to kill humans. And they're not even really allowed. They just keep it secret from mostly the human race, not even really the mutant race, just to keep doing that. Tevi's saying, who keeps dying? Kid Omega. Oh yeah, Tevi's saying Kid Omega is basically Kenny from South Park who keeps dying. I mean, the X-Force seems to be dying the most out of all the teams, and it's appropriate. They're like the X-Men CIA, so they're doing crazy dangerous things. They're going full lethal on like pretty much all the other X-Men. And by the way, the other X-Men can be punished hard for hurting humans. Hellions all about that. Another series. So anyways, they're talking about it, and then Jean and Wolverine embrace because the X-Men are a world of polygamy and differences now. And that's how this issue ends. So, For those of you paying attention, that means Black Widow was number 3, Empyre number 2, X-Force was number 1 for me. I truly liked this book. I thought it was well made, put together in a really fun way. Ben Percy wrote this book, but I think Duggan's been working on this series too. They've both been doing a great job. I think Percy's taking over in general, and he's been interesting. He's not like my favorite writer, but it's a cool series that they've been doing well. Joshua Cassara did the art of this particular one, and then Guru EFX did the coloring, and then Joe Caramagna, I can't say that, Caramagna, what an interesting name, is the letterer. Sorry, and then Tom Muller is credited for design, which is interesting. He probably contributed to some of the artwork in this book. So overall, I would recommend this series. We're at the point where you should probably just wait to get the first trade to catch up a little bit, and then you can kind of hunt down the newer issues. Tevye is saying the one X-Men series I didn't like was Fallen Angels because, my God, that was disappointing. I keep hearing that. I haven't read it myself, but it was nominated for like one of the worst books that came out last year by you guys. So I hear Fallen Angels is a particularly weak link in the X-Men chain, which is a shame because I am pretty much with Tevye. Most of these other ones I like. Here, let's pull out that little reading order thing they have. I think it's at the end, actually. X-Men, the core series, I like, but it's kind of weird. Like, it does a good job of sort of building the rest of the X-Men line around it, which I quite like, and it keeps just adding new and interesting things to it. Marauders, I love and just can't stop reading out of a desperate attempt to find out what's going on with Kitty Pryde. Excalibur and New Mutants I have to catch up on, but I haven't disliked that series. Cable, I saw Cable issue number 1. I saw it was by Scotty Young. I know how I tend to react to Scotty Young's books, and I just skipped it. I'm not a huge fan of that guy. Children of the Atom's coming out soon. I'm not sure what to expect out of that, or maybe it's out yet. I don't know. I've also been really enjoying the Giant Size X-Men books. I have Magneto on order, and you can expect that out next week. And I'm getting that, and I think X-Men number 10 should be coming out soon if it hasn't already. So, yeah, most of these X-Men books are great, and honestly, they're so important for living up to the hype of House of X. It would be real easy to just have the core House of X series sort of promise all of these new changes for the X-Men, and then the actual series to either kind of just walk away from all those ideas and just move on to the status quo, or to just not live up to them. And they didn't. They've really been living up to these ideas of no, we're going to take the X-Men in a new direction and do different things with them. And by and large, they have. Tevye was saying that it's sad because he loves X-23, that Fallen Angels hasn't exactly lived up to it. I agree, but 1 week book isn't that bad in the world of an X-Men publication history. And everything else is so strong that it's hopefully that series can find its voice and direction, or maybe it can just go away and we can focus on the more successful X-Men books. Tevye is saying I have no hope for Children of the Atom. Listen, we're all used to that name being poison because of Bendis, but he's not writing this, so I'm keeping an open mind. We'll see, it could be anything, and they're setting it up as a mystery, and I know, every instinct in me is just oh, that's going to be terrible, because we're used to it feels like a Bendis story, and they spent so much time setting up mysteries in Bendis's DC work that it's just so easy to associate that with, whatever, bad content. Tevye was saying that he really liked X-23 as all new Wolverine. Yeah, that was a great run, and she even has a little cameo at the beginning of, I think it was X-Force number 9, so not this book, but the previous book. It has, I think it was issue number 9. No, it has to be. Issue number 9 has one of my favorite moments in the post-House of X era of X-Men comics, where I think it's Laura or Honey Badger, I honestly can't tell, is playing Spin the Bottle with Wolverine and Daken, and they both are holding a fist up to their hands. I think most of you have probably seen the preview image for this if you follow any of the news channels. And whoever the bottle lands on has to extend their claw, and so it lands on Daken, and he's like, ah, crap. He hits himself, they fall over. Everyone starts laughing and cheering and drinking, and then Logan helps his son up, and he starts healing from it. Oh, okay. Tabby was saying it was Honey Badger. It looked like her, but I just was like, where's Laura in this story? Like, that would be a fun little bit. But I guess maybe something's going on with Fallen Angels. I don't know. There's so much going on with the X-Men at once. It's the one downside. I don't hate it, though. Like, they got this cool idea. It's selling. They got people interested in these books. And there's, like, enough variety out there that there's different things for different people. Let X-Men grow and flourish like never before. They've already started kind of adapting these things into some of the more free-to-play Marvel games, but just you wait until someone comes along to really adapt this into something. Like, what happens when we get to visit Krakoa in a straight-up video game? Like, it's not going to happen with that Avengers Square game coming out, because that's too soon. There's no way they could fit that into the developmental cycle, and it's focused on the Avengers. But one of these days, we're going to see some more of that stuff in like a different format from even the comics. And I think it's going to start to really dig into what people think when they think of the X-Men. Oh, someone forgot to turn off his ringtone when he started streaming. Comixology wants me to buy like all these books that I basically just got a print copy of. Let's mute that while we're talking. So anyways, everybody's saying, yeah, the one downside I have with these X-Men is, well, the upcoming event, which has 23 parts, which is insane. I did not know that. I knew about the upcoming event. I did not know about 23 parts. I'm going to almost immediately correct... Wait, hold on. What's it called again? Whatever. House of X-Men. I'm sure it'll be a thing. News. Yeah, they don't really say. I can't remember what it's called. I hope you're describing tie-ins too, because if you're talking about a 20... X of Swords, thank you. If you're describing the core of X of Swords being 23 parts, originally described as 15 parts, the new X of Swords checklist is much larger. Okay, so it is a checklist. Here is the checklist. Okay, so it is the existing books, and it's kind of like Dawn of X, where they're bouncing between them. It seems like it's going to be more focused on something like this, but that is long, but I don't feel like we're going to be obligated to read all of those books, which helps. It's like Empyre, where it's like, I'm not going to read every single one of those tie-ins, but especially the Empyre and Fantastic Four ones, which kind of a good early setup, have felt worth it. So that is very take it or leave it kind of thing, and I feel that's kind of how the X-Men comics have been so far, which mitigates it. If you were expected to buy all 23 of those books, that's a lot. That would be pretty obnoxious. I'm guessing some people are going to want to do that or feel compelled to do that to fit in the story. I wouldn't worry too much. Tevi is saying hopefully it's better than Empyre. I've heard from some of you guys you're not liking Empyre so far. I will say you're not. Come on. There's nothing there yet. You're going off of early like tie-in comics. The first issue of the core series isn't even out yet, so the way some people are setting it up, it's like you've written it off as it's bad already, when it's like one of the better events I've read for some time, excluding House of X, because House of X, that's like a whole other ballgame. But, everyone's entitled to their own opinion or whatever. I see a lot of value in Empyre so far. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Alrighty, well, so there doesn't seem to be a ton to chat right now. If you got any questions, now's the time to do it, because I'm going to start wrapping things up. Or comments or whatever. So, tomorrow... Well, hopefully I can read all of these. But upcoming, we got Catwoman 80th Anniversary. I enjoyed Green Lantern 80th Anniversary so much, I went back and picked up this one. Still not sure about the Joker. And honestly, based on what I've read of that Catwoman book so far, I might not pick it up. But I enjoyed Green Lantern so much, I ended up getting Catwoman, so we'll see. Undiscovered Country, book 1. I've heard a lot of things about it, and now that the first volume of the trade's out, I'll let you know how that goes. But I love Charles Soule, so big hopes there. And then he's working with Scott Snyder, which is pretty cool. And then Bitterroot number 6. I'll let you guys know how I feel about Bitterroot as a whole. Also, DC's Dead Planet #1 is coming out tomorrow, and I have that on order. I also have the next Justice League book on order. I think it's just those two, but I don't know for sure. So when I get a hold of those books, I'll let you guys. Well, we'll see. You'll find out tomorrow. I don't know how I want to go about this. I wanted to even do Catwoman today with these reviews to sort of balance it out a little better, but I really didn't finish it in time, and it was getting kind of late. Tevi's saying Robin Anniversary is really good. I think that was last year, so I haven't seen it. I'll have to keep an eye out for it. Tevi is saying that why he was saying that about Empyre before, and I'm not jumping down your throat too much about it, Tevi. I'm just saying, hey, come on. We should be fair. It hasn't been out that much, but he makes a good point. He's been burned out with Marvel events because a lot of them start out strong but fall apart near the end. Is there a Marvel event where that isn't true? I mean, House of X doesn't really feel like that, but it doesn't feel like a traditional event either. What was that other... What else has run recently? I don't even remember. What was the one before that? I mean, like, most of them have been junk. Inhumans versus X-Men was grab. Yeah, that other one was Infinity War before that, or whatever they called it. Didn't get much out of that myself. And that started strong, so I understand people's reluctance. I will remind you this is Al Ewing's first event, and he's kind of teaming up with Dan Slott, but Ewing seems to be handling most of it, and that leaves me quite optimistic because he's a good writer. You guys got to remember, Secret Empire, yeah, sure, that one's junk too. Tevi is saying, personally, my favorite recent is Secret Wars 2015, and that's about it. And then he says, Infinity Warps, my god, that was a train wreck. I think that was more of like just a special series of comics rather than like an actual event. Infinity Warps, I should say. Secret Wars, I loved too. Obviously, we talked a lot about that, and I wrote fan fiction about it. And Secret Empire, I did not care for. So, like, yeah, they have had a rough track record. But I was going to say, something to keep in mind is that up until recently, we really haven't had a huge diverse roster of people writing these events. Most of them have been Bendis, with a couple of other exceptions. And to be fair, we do sometimes get good people writing an event like Jason Aaron, and I find they are a little underwhelming. But then we get someone like Donny Cates, who does Absolute Carnage, and I found that was really strong. Tevi is saying, your fan fiction of Secret Wars is tons of fun. Thanks. I was thinking about it recently because I might be putting together a demo reel. We might do something like that again. I just have to watch out for copyright because it's that we don't have much of a case for free use with those kind of videos. So we had to basically strip out any actual references to like Marvel and DC content, depending on what kind of university we're doing. Tevi is saying War of the Realms was good. You know, I didn't like it when I just read the core series, but the more I've kind of caught up on tie-ins and other stuff, the more I've come to appreciate it. Even the core series of War of Realms. Like, the first time I read it, I don't know, maybe I wasn't in the right mood for it or something, but I've come around to it a lot more, too. So, they've also gotten better about events, I should say. Marvel's gotten better about events in more recent years. Like, if we're talking about the last couple. And I think part of it is because they don't have Bendis writing these events over and over again. And Dan Slott doing the Spider-Man ones. Bam 2550519 says he thought Black Widow #1 came out in November. It could have. I literally picked it up off the rack when I was looking at it. Let's take a look. If so, they didn't have any of the other issues at my store, which is kind of weird. And it says 2020. So, unless you mean this September, which is not the case because I have a print copy right here. Come on, Marvel, load your website. It says published September 2nd, 2020. Where did I get this book from? All their dates are wrong. Like, so that's my only answer to you, Bam, is they published it early, I guess, for whatever reason. Maybe because they want to build up to the movie now that it's coming out later in this year. I genuinely don't know. That makes no sense to me. Like, it's so funny because, like, I didn't order Black Widow #1 new. And it says on Marvel's website it's published in September. So, a little under 2 months from now. What? That's probably Marvel's website or something, I guess. Because I have a variant copy too, because they sold out all their regular ones, I guess. Teppy was saying Hunted was good, even though it was a Spider-Man event by Nick Spencer. It was really good. I haven't read it, but I've been enjoying Nick Spencer's Spider-Man comics when I pick them up here and there. I think I do have the next one on order too. So, because I couldn't do all the reviews because I don't have all my books yet, I will see you guys tomorrow and we can talk some more about that stuff. I do also have a list of what I'm getting next week because people keep asking me and I keep not knowing, and then I have to look it up on the fly, which is very awkward to do, so I actually wrote them down when I was ordering it all. So next week, I have Death Metal #2, Strange Adventures #3, Empyre #1, Giant Sized Magneto #1, Amazing Spider-Man #44, and Venom #26. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, and hopefully I can get all my books on Wednesday this time. I think they're usually really good about that at my comic store. I think they just got a little overwhelmed today by whatever. It's all good. Teppy is saying, I agree, Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man is fantastic and 10 times better than Dan Slott's garbage. Yeah, I think that makes me like Spencer's book more in comparison. It seems to have stepped it up. Compared to Dan Slott, I have heard, like, and I wonder sometimes if that makes me like Nick Spencer's book almost way more because of the way he writes these Spider-Man comics being so much better than Dan Slott's, but not actually being that exceptional in the world of Spider-Man. But every time I read those Spider-Man books, I just like them all on their own without having to compare them to Dan Slott or anything else. I just think they're good character work, and he has, like, Nick Spencer has a fun sense of using, like, Boomerang and kind of creating his own mythology of Spider-Man out of stuff like that. And on the whole, like, Spider-Man just got a cool new pet. It's great. I think he's a good Spider-Man writer. I say that because there are people out there who kind of like Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run at first and then have kind of lost their way or don't really like it much at all. And I just don't agree personally. Tevi is going to say something where he's, I'm still hoping for the marriage for Peter Parker and Mary Jane to finally return. Yeah, I don't love how they teased that in Nick Spencer's run and then didn't do anything about it. You know, whatever. At least Spider-Man's comics feel human again. You know, I can live without the marriage if I feel like there's a character with human needs and isn't just like, oh, I'm going to be a CEO and I have no human relations whatsoever and, like, I just am going to flitter from one Spider-Man story to the next without any character development like Peter was during Dan Slott's run for years and years and years. So for him to have, like, relationships with his roommates, like, this is I think the thrust of the difference. And yeah, he's dating Mary Jane again, and there's this relationship with J. Jonah Jameson that's really fun. But I think the huge part of why Nick Spencer's run is so strong is because he has roommates, and they're all written like humans, and that interaction is very great. All right, I'm getting Aaron saying I'm waiting for the marriage of Mary Jane. Look, you guys don't have to tell me why I support, like, that marriage and stuff. I'm just saying if they're good comics, I can live without them being married. It definitely makes that pill a lot easier to swallow and lets me kind of let go of One More Day. A huge problem with One More Day was that Dan Slott wasn't doing anything with Spider-Man's character after that event. I really, like, I can't understate how much that affected things. But we'll talk more about Spider-Man when we get to it next week, for one thing. And then Teppy was saying, oh yeah, he's talking about how they kind of teased One More Day being, like, undone and stuff in the more recent Amazing Spider-Man books, and he was saying how that makes it mad because we were this close to them getting married again. Yeah, they didn't need to do that. They knew what they were messing around with when they did it. I think fan outrage would have been much worse if it was somehow, like, another act of them writing Mary Jane's character out or pushing her away from Spider-Man again, but that's not really what they were doing. I think it's okay for them to be single, especially because we're kind of, like, you gotta think about these things outside of a vacuum a little bit. And yeah, Marvel and DC, Marvel, I should say, doesn't have a character quite like this, but DC very much has Superman and Batman getting married and going in this direction. So maybe it's for the best that Spider-Man isn't doing that right now. I'm all for superheroes and characters being married and having a family and pushing their characters beyond just the norm we've been stuck with. But if they do it all at once, if every character starts doing this and they all start copying each other, which comics do that a lot, we can't like that'll make there's so much wrong with that at once, because what's going to happen is it's going to start feeling repetitive and predictable, and people are going to hate it. Then they're going to overcompensate and make all these superheroes single again, and the lesson that's going to be taken away is, oh, we can't marry off these characters. For the love of God, that can't happen again. Like, we finally are getting some character development with some of these characters and pushing them relationships out beyond just the standard dating thing that's been going on for decades and decades. And like, we can't just have one or two married couples across the comic book thing, but we don't need them all to get married at once either. And I think there's a danger of doing too much of that at once. Okay, so yeah, thanks for joining me for this video. Something else to say. Tevi is saying, agreed with what I was saying, not to mention that Dan Slott clone conspiracy basically destroyed Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider. Yeah, I think they've already walked that all back. I forget what book I was reading, but Ben Reilly was in it. And they basically were like, oh, he's all better now. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Move it along. Move it all along. What was that? I had to have read something that had that. I think it was the most recent Spider-Man comic, but I can't remember what context he would have shown up in. Maybe it was the most recent Miles one? Does anyone know? Where's Ben Reilly been lately? Anyways, Tevia says, yeah, please leave that in the chat, because Tevia's saying, I think that was Spider-Geddon, but I didn't read that. It could be, I was catching up on some Absolute Carnage books, and he might have shown up in like The Amazing Spider-Man in that story or something. Whatever. Ben Reilly's better now, though, so they kind of have walked back all that clone conspiracy nonsense. I tore that series apart when it came out, or that story apart, because clone conspiracy was awful. Just, I think that was like the low point of Dan Slott's writing with Spider-Man, to be honest. And then Tevia's saying, I'm really hoping for the return of 10-year-old Jonathan Samuel Kent, Superboy, and Wally West could return with his kids by the end of Death Metal. I don't think that's happening. I would love that to happen. It would make sense. Bendis just brought back like the Superboy from New Earth era, so why bother having two Superboys that are teenagers? I don't know if I can get into that too much. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do this, though. For example, if teenage Superboy is over in the future doing Legion, a book, by the way, I dropped a long time ago because I'm so done with Bendis. But maybe he can stay in the future. We're in with time travel. We just have a little younger John Kent come to the present, or I have no idea if 5G is happening. I don't think it is, but if they're doing a new direction for DC after Death Metal, if they're moving things in that direction, it feels like there's room to change things. All of reality just got upheaved in Death Metal. It doesn't feel like the kind of story that's setting up a crisis, but the first issue certainly presents a possibility for that. Maybe they can make some changes like this, but if they were going to do that, I feel like they would want to get rid of Bendis. And they'd have to because he wants to do that, obviously. I don't think he regrets that decision. Aaron's saying, it's called prospecting. Find out who the better Superboy is. I guess. It's a bad way of doing it. Tevi is saying, last time they saw him in Spider-Geddon, he got better and he was betrayed by Doc Ock, but they made him better. Yeah, okay, whatever random book I'm thinking of, they were talking about those events, so it was after Spider-Geddon. I think it was in one of the Absolute Carnage books he shows up or something. Tevi is saying, I think 5G is probably dead. I think so too. Chris's Comic says, hello, fellow collectors. Hello, thanks for joining us. We had a good pull of Marvel books today. Tevi was saying, Bendis is finally leaving Superman, so hopefully that happens soon. He is? I didn't hear that. How is all this news happening without me knowing about it? Leaving. DC needs to get rid of him completely. Hey, there we go. Bendis is leaving the Superman titles. Good. He joined back in 2018. It's amazing how quick that all flies by. I'm heading towards the end of my run on Superman, so I've been more reflective on it, and I will be more grateful that I got to heal my near-death experience through Superman and get through this pandemic. Yeah, I'm glad he's fine. Right before he joined DC, he had some crazy health issue and was in the hospital, and he showed pictures of it, and it sounded like something almost really bad happened to his eye. And just because I don't like him as a writer, I'm glad he's okay. And Bendis has always been a very positive person in the comic book community, at least from my experience, in terms of promoting others and supporting other people and that sort of thing. And even answering people's questions. The easiest way to find an example of a comic book script is through Bendis, because he's posted a lot of examples online. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do that, but I think he's got good examples of what the kind of script Marvel might look for respective writers out there. This article's saying they don't really know when Bendis is leaving. Bendis usually works pretty far ahead on the script, so it could be a while. That's very true. I'm trying to get a sense of what else Bendis might be working on, but it's just talking about stuff he's already done. I hope he's done. I hate all his books in DC. Someone in one of his other streams asked if there are books out there from Bendis that I liked, and I gave a huge long list because there really are. I just haven't read them in so long, and I haven't read a single DC book by. Well, that's not true. I really liked Naomi. And I talked about that on a previous stream too. I think it was 2 streams ago, to be fair. Tevia says, I agreed. DC Comics needs to get rid of Bendis completely. It sounds harsh, but he did such a bad job with Superman. I don't know what else to say about the matter. I don't want him anywhere near the DC books. He poisoned all of Superman, essentially. It's a weird thing to say, but they were so interesting and so fun right before Bendis took over, and they just dropped down in quality so quickly the second he started writing for him. Chris Cox is just saying, just got Amazing Spider-Man 252 and Secret Wars number 8 today, 2 of the books I've been hunting for. I'm guessing you are talking about original Secret Wars number 8, so that's cool, man. I'm a huge collector, but it's cool though. I tend to eat my books. Not physically, but I tend to burn through them, so I don't tend to collect them. But I did, I was talking about this on a previous stream, but I do have all these Justice League Europe books I got, and it did leave me a little more might start picking up older stuff and seeing what kind of fun books I can get from back issues and random stores and stuff. Chris, oops, let's go in order. Tevi's saying, hopefully he leaves soon because his Young Justice has also been banned. Haven't checked it out. I think I saw it being solicited, saw Bendis was writing it, and made the correct decision. Chris Comics is also saying he's after Amazing Spider-Man number 300. I'm guessing that one's a little hard to get. And Amazing Spider-Man number 195, first appearance of Black Cat. Those first appearance ones, those can be hard to get sometimes. They spike up in value and stuff depending on the character, and Black Cat feels like one such character that would probably ratchet it up. Best of luck to you. You never know when you'll be able to find those, or whatever. It's a fun part about collecting, is that's a reason to go out to other stores and stuff when you're visiting other places out of town, because you never know what you're going to find or what they're going to have, especially these days when inventory is kind of all over the place at different stores, and a lot of stores were kind of, at least ours, tried to get rid of some of its older inventory so it didn't have a ton of books it was sitting on, so that A, it could bring in money right away, but B, they had a little bit more control over their cash flow, basically. It wasn't just sitting in retail items that they might be able to sell one day, but weren't in the middle of a pandemic. So now's a good time to be collecting books. I got all those Justice League Europe books for relatively cheap, given that it was a huge big set. I got a good price for it. And if I really cared, I could probably resell them for a decent amount if I boxed them all up and stuff. Because I paid $2 each, and most of them are worth more than $2, which is kind of interesting. But not happening. Not gonna do it. I don't care enough to do it. And I like to keep these books. I want to read them, and if I get sick of having them or sitting around, or somehow I fill out this short box that I got last week, then I'll start giving them away like I always do. And because I've talked about this at length, but I'm a big believer in just spreading out books into the world. Now that being said, if I ever got my hands on Amazing Spider-Man number 300 or 191 or something, you better believe I'm keeping that, and you better believe I'm taking good care of it, because I can appreciate value when it stumbles onto me. I don't think I'd ever get those books by accident, though. Really, usually it's just fun. like the books I get are just older random ones that aren't worth anything, because at a certain point so many get printed that most aren't valuable past a certain date. And I wouldn't recommend buying books with the expectation of profit ever. It doesn't sound like Chris's Comics does that. Like, most people just collect them for fun, and he's talking about how he has 4 Action Comics in his collections graded and stuff. Like, that's someone who's looking to build their collection, and that's cool. Buying them for reselling them and playing around with that game on eBay, like Chris is talking about how the prices can be high and stuff, I wouldn't recommend. It's very risky, and it's hard to predict. It's possible. There's some people who are good at it, but I think you'd be better off, like, I don't know, put that money towards stocks. We don't need to talk about that right now. Joey and I are all into finance and stocks. We could both talk a lot about that. So Tevye is also saying, oh, speaking of deceased, I'm just wondering oh yeah, you were talking about deceased earlier, Tevye, and I missed your comment because I was kind of focusing on whatever I was talking about at the time. But he's wondering, I need an opinion on Deceased at Hope's End because I've been reading and it's been fantastic, and the next issue has the Super Sons return. Yes, so I'm going to talk more about Deceased tomorrow, but I have been reading at Hope at World's End. That's been online because that's like a digital first thing, and maybe it'll come out on print, but those DC spin-off books, they're too fun to pass up on, like when they're available all the time online. So I'm caught up on that series, and I love it. I've said it before on these reviews, but I will happily say it again. I did not care that much about the original DC core like introduction series. It kind of felt a little rushed to me, and like it was just kind of doing the Marvel Zombies thing, but I've come to really appreciate it because that setup, I didn't know they were going to do a million spin-offs to DC's, but now that they are, that setup has really been paid off nicely because they're following up on it in a way that we never saw out of like Marvel Zombies or anything like that. So I really truly like Deceased, all the different spin-offs. The one with the villains, the Unkillables, I liked, although I'm still waiting on a print copy of number 3, even though the digital one's been out forever. I have the print copy of the first 2 of Unkillables, and I want that 3rd one. I'm gonna get that 3rd one. I'm gonna get it, I swear. But it's just been like this slow drag for it, as like the dates on all these comics are all over the place. I ordered Giant Size Magneto before the pandemic, I think, or like weeks and weeks ago, and it's... Hopefully I'll get it next week. So it's all over the place. Chris is saying, I'm building one hotkey that has spiked a lot for the last 2 months. I have one hotkey item that has spiked, highest one sold for over $2,000. Yeah, you can get lucky, and I don't want to discount people that do it. I'm just warning, if someone's interested in that, people get these crazy ideas in their head where they start picking up variant comics that are printed like this year, and they expect they'll be able to sell it one day for a good amount of money. It's like, no. Never. Like those books, especially books printed recently, are so heavily printed that they're not valuable like that. The value is in the stories they tell and stuff. Chris Comics is saying Ultimate Fallout 4, first appearance of Miles Morales. That's kind of cool. That's a more recent book, but I can see how that would have value to it because like people probably didn't expect that to have as much. I saw my comic book store had all these trades sitting of the Ultimates books, and I was like, man, I feel bad about that because there was a time where those were hot items. I have no interest in those books anymore. I wouldn't buy them anymore, even the ones that I didn't have, because I wouldn't really recommend them to people. They haven't aged too well. Miles books I would recommend, but I'm thinking like they had Ultimate Fantastic Four, Ultimate X-Men, I'm sure like Ultimatum. There was a book there, and that's like, well, Ultimatum's obviously a train wreck, but like some of those other ones, it felt as though we could have easily... What am I trying to say? Like, it feels like nowadays there's better ways to introduce people to like the Fantastic Four or the X-Men, and I wouldn't want to use the Ultimates line to do that anymore. Tevye's saying I miss Ultimate Marvel Universe so much. I do not. I used to love it. The Ultimate comics got me into Marvel more than anything else, but they haven't aged that well. I go back to them sometimes and I'm like, oh, I liked this, huh? And I get that they were accessible and they were doing different things, and some people really liked certain versions of those characters, but it feels like they've saved any characters like that and pulled them into the Marvel Universe. And they've done cool things since then too, where like different versions of characters have shown up. Like the Makers had all these cool storylines since Secret Wars, and that's great. I think that's the way to go about it, because like Ultimate Comics always had their value, but it's definitely a product of the early 2000s. And if you go back and read some of those books, they don't hold up much anymore. It's a shame too, because I really liked Ultimate X-Men, and then I read it recently, and I was like, why did I like this? Alright, I wrapped up 20 minutes ago, or like half an hour ago, but as always, we started chatting for a bit. Tevye said, I agree, the only good Ultimate series was Ultimate Spider-Man. And that's about it. Yeah, I didn't really mention Ultimate Spider-Man because that holds up pretty well, but even then, it's like, no, I don't know. Like, a lot of people know those stories already. Still not sure if that's where I'd focus in terms of introducing. Well, unless someone's prepared to read like all 100 issues of the original Bendis Bagley run, like, I'm not sure it has this much value. If you read those books, because of all the character building, because it's so consistent for so long, it's good. I really liked it. But everything else is kind of... Tevye's like, yeah, Ultimate Apocalypse sucked. Oh, boy. Don't even get me started on that. That's like when Mr. Sinister pushed Xavier down a flight of stairs. It's like, look how edgy we are. Mr. Sinister's dressed like a gangster instead of some weird pale guy with a red jewel thing. And it's like, it does not hold up. Even the stuff I remember liking doesn't hold up that much. Tevye says Ultimate Fantastic Four had good ideas with bad execution. Correct! But, you know, for all that series' faults, it gave us The Maker, which is a really cool take on Reed Richards, who's done a lot of awesome stories over the years. Like, think about what he was such a cool part of, like, Time Runs Out and Secret Wars. He had a cool role in Absolute Carnage. Every time that guy shows up, he's always up to something. And he's great. Chris's Comics saying, three books that people always want in their collection that have been popular to have together was Amazing Spider-Man number 252, Secret Wars, and Amazing Spider-Man number 300. You see that a lot. Oh, sure. Anything where we can talk about Black Suit Spidey, right? Really Venom stuff and all that. Tevye is talking about Ultimate Thanos. I don't remember that. I have no memory of Ultimate Thanos. Maker premiered an Ultimate Secret. Oh, that's true. But you know, Fantastic Four built us to that point. It would, you know, he had to have come from somewhere, right? And I think the Fantastic Four series, like the Ultimate Fantastic Four series in hindsight, is kind of neat. Because you can see the Maker's time before he turned all corrupt and messed up. Alrighty. So, yeah. Thank you, Chris and Tevye, for joining me, and the other viewers who have stayed kind of quiet throughout, but have kind of been watching throughout according to these numbers. So if you're just here to talk, Aaron, Bam, you guys kind of contributed here and there, and you don't have to speak and chat if you're just enjoying the stream. I appreciate it all the same. I will almost certainly see you guys tomorrow. I'll get those books by tomorrow, but even then, if not, I have a bunch of other stuff to read and review. So yeah, we'll kind of spread out the reviews this week. I don't necessarily want to do that normally. I just had no choice this week, and I got fed up with waiting with my comic book store. I like them. Shop at the Dragon if you live in Guelph or Milton in Ontario, but they didn't have a great week is all, and I went there twice. So, and I want it's a walk and stuff. Like I have a car, but the store is close enough to me that it's just a nice 10-minute walk both ways, and so I was okay with doing it twice, but after the third one, it's like, oh, we're still working on DC. I was like, okay, have a good day. I'll see you guys later. And I figured I might as well do at least some of these books, and I thought Marvel would be a pretty good way to delineate them from the DC books coming tomorrow, and we'll throw the indies in. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. One sec. Akbar is just saying that he just downloaded this issue, the Empyre one. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, Akbar. Unfortunately, I was literally just clicking on end stream, so I'll see you next time. Thanks for hopping in. I have a feeling you just came in at the end, but don't worry, this video will be back up once YouTube's done processing it. So see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.